Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So, if you guys have been watching the stream, I've been rolling out with a second build just to increase my clear speed. Turns out this is actually really good at dropping delve bosses as well because Chaos Ignites are freaking OP. Anyway, so I was originally mucking around with Firestorm, it didn't work, and I was like, well, let's make it something interesting and sort of exciting and a little bit different. Now, this isn't like a new style of build, this is just the way that I am building a Black Flame Detonate Dead Elementalist. So, basically, we just got to switch that around. The Black Flame Amethyst Ring, what it basically does is enemies ignited by you take chaos damage instead of fire damage from ignites, which means you scale up Ignite Dot as you would with any other Ignite build, except at the very end, it converts it to chaos damage, which, funnily enough, is really, really OP when you couple that with Withered. So one of the other benefits is Withered does not expire on enemies ignited by you. So what we'll see when we get into the skill setups and what you'll see in the POB is I actually use a couple of Wither totems in a setup to apply 15 stacks of Wither onto every enemy that I fight, and then you basically see it slowly accelerate to the point where the enemy dies. Really cool way to play this build, and it deals with the problematic Ignite resistant enemies that they've put in the game, because as far as I can see, there's no purely Chaos resistant enemies. It's not a bosser, this is not made for bossing. This is strictly made for like map clear and whatnot, but as you'll see in the B-roll at the very start of the video, it doesn't really have any issues with bossing. Like, it's a competent bosser. Have a try with Ubers? No, I'm probably not gonna. I might. It's a really good build for Delve, really tanky. The tree comes in at about 164k effective hit pool, and if you guys want investment, I'll put it in the description, but at the current market rate, we've got about 23.3 div, nearly 24 div invested into the build right now. So it's pretty cheap. And that's basically pricing everything. Like, that's not including the Awakened Jewels, and you can play it without the Awakened Jewels, it'll just be a little bit less damaging. But yeah, and this was just from basically just farming Delve and upgrading as I went, and I'll talk about that as I go through this video. This is just like a build update 1, similar to the Shield Crush series. And the reason why I'm playing this is just to get currency at this stage, and I'm also mucking around with Breach, which is a lot of fun. Anyway, so that's basically it. How Detonate Den works on this build is we use Corpse Walkers, and then basically we run around, we drop corpses, and then we pop Detonate Dead. No real issues there. And then that then catches the enemy, and then it picks up with Inflict Fire Exposure on hit. And then we also have Fan the Flames in our build. Sorry, there it is. And we also have Ignite Proliferation in the build, which means that basically everything on the screen catches Chaos Fire and just burns to all living shit. It's just a really cool build. The other advantage with this build is we use a Viridi's Veil, and for whatever reason, Detonate Dead's super cheap. It was like 1 div with a Detonate Dead enchant on it, and what that means is we then need to roll, and I just crafted this Sapphire Ring, I didn't even buy it. We then roll a Magic Sapphire Ring to deal with whatever you want to deal with. We run Black Flame based on whether you want crit immunity or whether you want hex immunity. And then beyond that, we also use the Eternal Struggle, and basically we look for one with a Searing Exarch implicit that is I guess a predominant or a more dominant roll. And then that gives us basically enemies die at 15% life remaining, which is basically Cull, which is super powerful. This is like, I would say this is like Pest in slot, realistically. If you can find a good roll, and I actually got a really good roll on this, and these are dirt cheap, then yeah, it's really, really competent. Now, my actual trees in my items are dog shit. They're not even worth looking at, so I'm not even going to talk about it. They've got to be re-rolled at this stage. And everything else is pretty moderate, like nothing's really crazy. Incandescent Heart. Now, people will be asking, well, why would you use that? Like, why wouldn't you use something else? Number 1, good ES. Number 2, good armor. But it's actually the 25% of elemental damage taken hits taken as chaos damage. And the reason why this is significant is because this is a CI build that runs chaos inoculation, which means I'm immune to chaos damage, which means 25% of the inbound elemental damage gets converted through the incandescent tier to chaos damage, and then that basically just is completely nullified by the build. So you're only taking 75% of the elemental damage that you would otherwise take in any other circumstance. The other big defense layer here is the obvious Aegis Aurora, and then basically running that with Divine, I think it was a Divine Shield. Yep. And basically, every time we get hit by a big attack, we block and we get 2% of our armor, and we have about just shy of like, thing on here, it gets up to about 39,000 armor. So 2% of 39,000, we get that back as ES. I also run a lot of energy shield regeneration on this build, and also recharge rate, because I like, when I play any sort of CI builds, I like running into recharge rate, and we also have a Watcher's Eye that increases recharge rate as well, which is here. And then the other thing that we do for defense, which was super cheap this league, is Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh with Essence Glutton. And what Essence Glutton does is, where are you? It's in the Necromancer. So, for each nearby corpse, you and nearby allies regenerate 0.2% of energy shield, and also 5 mana, and basically regenerate 8% energy shield over 2 seconds when you consume a corpse and mana. So it's real. It makes it just like an arc generator running around. You basically, you drop, detonate, dead, and you just regenerate your energy shield straight away. So super powerful, self-sustaining, and just absolutely rips through packs and mobs anywhere you go. I've sort of balanced this on a bit of a cheap sort of budget, so you don't need like 24 div worth gear. Like, that's relatively cheap for an endgame build anyway, if you've invested into it and build it up. But you know, you could switch stuff out of this as long as you got the base items, which is Black Flame, Aegis Aurora, Incandescent Tear, and Viridi's Veil. You could and Corpse Walkers. You could sort of do whatever you want with the other stuff and make it cheaper or whatever you want to do, as long as you balance out your resistances. And that's pretty much it. Oh, by the way, this also uses the Red Dream, which we never generally use, and this is how I generate endurance charges. But anyway, let's get into the build, and I'll explain how exactly I've mechanically got this working. Now, DPS on this, interestingly, like, it only says 354,000 basically Ignite DPS, or Chaos Ignite, if you want to call it. And then if you go Val Detonate Dead, you know, it's a little higher than that. I suspect the POB doesn't calculate this properly, because it is doing way north of this number to be able to eviscerate the stuff that you saw on screen. And so I don't actually know what the damage is on this. I just know that it does stupid amounts of damage. Anyway, someone in the comments might be able to correct me on that and tell me what for. But anyway, let's get into the build and let's go through the mechanics. Okay, so as usual, I always like to go through the mechanics screen so you can see that I don't have a bullshit tree here that I've just ticked a heap of buttons on to make it all work. And so let's go through this. So number one, everyone always asks me what pantheons. So it's Soul Lunaris, Soul Aberith. This just deals with huge amounts of enemies and delve with Soul Lunaris. And Soul of Aberith is just good on Burning Ground, which is really bad for ES, and it stops the effect of Ignites. Now, I generate Frenzy Charges from Cold Snap, which I have set on a custom damage taken setup. So when enemies die over the top of Cold Snap, you get 25% chance to get Frenzy Charges. This won't apply to bosses, so this isn't going to come back to boss damage, but realistically, like, this is a clear build, and that's also not going to stop you from doing huge damage. Endurance charges are being generated from the Red Dream, which is down here. And so basically by taking Faith and Steel, we have an increased chance of having endurance charges. And also gain 7% of fire damage as extra chaos damage is actually a good damage buff for this build as well. So next thing, Arcane Surge. I'm pretty sure I had this set up in one of my skill sets. Yeah, so I've got this set up on my Cold Snap and my Void Sphere setup. Now, I'm not entirely sure it will absolutely trigger the way that I've got it set up. I'm still sort of working through things here. So, will it affect the build? It doesn't even affect the build. So someone will be like, that doesn't work, it doesn't work, what are you doing? It doesn't even affect the build, so let's all just calm down. Nearby corpses, you know, we probably have like, you know, 5 or 10, but again, doesn't really affect the build. All it does is affects regeneration rate. That's it. Flasks are active. Flasks are always active on my builds because they're set up to auto trigger. Now, nearby enemies, we have it set to 10 because of the Linares mod, and because I delve, you generally always have 10, and this isn't a bosser. Have I killed recently? Generally, yes. If you're map clearing or delving, you're killing. Have you been hit recently? This build is made for getting hit. Convergence is a little bit of a distorter here. It mainly affects bosses or unique enemies, but you can tick it off. You still do respectable amounts of dot, and like I said, I'm not entirely sure what the actual DPS of this build is, but it's pretty good. So let's just go with that anyway. So that's the damage that it'll do to unique enemies anyway, or bosses, realistically. Consuming a corpse in the past, well, we're literally just detonating dead constantly, so yes, that's going to apply, and really it only affects regeneration rate. Nothing else is stacked up here. Guardian and Pinnacle boss DPS is clicked on, so I don't have any like standard bullshit infinite life crap going on, or no, and just have distorted DPS, so it's true DPS or true dot. Up 15 wither stacks. So the reason why I'm confident in that is because there's faster casting setup and multi totems. So you got 2 totems stacking wither stacks, and they just constantly cast on really quickly. So yes, that's a legit mod. I don't have anything else ticked here. Actually, enemies are shocked and enemies are ignited, and that actually legit pushes our damage up further. Funnily enough, spell damage and then Val Detonate dead damage. So it's just scaling up more. And that's coming from the Ascendancy, being an Elementalist, so we get that from Shaper of Storms and Shaper of Flames. So yes, that's legit. Exposed to fire, yes, we have fire exposure, does nothing though. Hinder, I'm not sure, I don't think I've got any hinder in the build. Nothing else, as far as I'm aware, applies to this build. That's basically it mechanically. It's not a overtly complex mechanic, and then with all that, you just slap on your Black Flame, and then you go buck wild with this build, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get into the gearing and talk about that. Okay, so gearing on this build. So obvious one is Viridi's Veil, and you want the enchant for Detonate Dead damage. Some people get AoE. I think this has got plenty of AoE because of the Fan the Flames and everything with the Ignite catching and the Ignite proliferation gem. So that's fine. And for mine, I ended up getting a +2 socket to gems, and you want to put all your auras in there because they're all then +2, which means you get more ES from Discipline and more armor, and Temper Shield doesn't do anything, and Defiance Spanner gives you a bit more armor. Basically, this does nothing else outside of that, and the specific mod, which is based on the ring that you've got positioned either in left or right, you're either hexproof or you take no extra damage from crits. And that's conditional to having a magic ring in one of your ring slots. So you lose some stats somewhere, but you just make it up in the rest of the build. The chest is incandescent tier, so like in the start of the video, the reason why we use it predominantly is the 25% of elemental damage taken from hits is taken as chaos damage, and that's completely nullified by the fact that we are a chaos inoculation build, which means we're immune to chaos. So, and we don't have life. So, nothing else on this matters outside of that and the base stats, which is the energy shield and the armor on the actual item as well. And the light radius is nice as well because it bases it off ES and stay alive. The wand that I'm using is a convoking wand. Funnily enough, I tested this with like burn damage and whatnot. You still get a significant damage buff from having minion damage, and I'm pretty sure that just scales off of the corpses that you explode with the Detonate Dead. Funnily enough, it's just how Detonate Dead works. So you want something with damage over time, increased fire dot, or fire damage over time, and increased minion damage. So far, this is pretty much the best roll that I could get. I can actually chuck one more roll on this. Let's do this while I'm in the video and see what happens. Yeah, okay, that was useless. Stun duration was not a good roll. We wanted burning damage. Anyway, that's basically it for the wand. Really basic wand. Black Flame, no brainer. You need it so you can do Chaos Ignites. And then basically you get Fire and Chaos Res. Chaos Res doesn't mean anything on this build because it's Chaos Inoculation. And you get 100% Ignite from Shaper of Flames anyway. So the Ignite enemies is really the only advantage to this. And the Withered stacks not nullifying off as well is really good as well. The other ring is... Now, the other ring is really specific, and it is a hunter ring, so I think I have an item level 84. All I did to get this ring, right, so you buy a hunter base ring, whatever the stat is. In my case, I got a sapphire ring because it's got cold resist. And then all I did was alteration spam the ring until I got the roll. So if you got like 400 or 500 alterations, just smack it until you get the roll. Don't go off and pay 1 div or 2 div for this ring. It's way too easy to craft it yourself. If you want to buy it, if you got the currency, you can. But have a crack at crafting, and this is like one of the easiest crafts that you will do. It's literally just alt spamming on a hunter influenced ring. Just make sure the item level is like 83 plus or 84 plus for the highest probability of this roll. Now Aegis Aurora, no brainer. I'll let you guys do the math. That's an easy one. Huge defense stats. Mine is a bit bricked because of the tree. I got this and it fucked up the armor and ES, but anyway, I'll probably get another one. Now, Eternal Struggle, you want the charisma roll on this. Now, you need to make sure that the Searing Exarch roll on this, the implicit, is the dominant, and that will mean you get the 15% cull effect, which is listed at the bottom of the item. So just make sure when you buy them. A lot of people put them up for expensive prices and expect that you don't go check the rolls, and then you go buy it and you're like, God damn, I just paid 1 div for that, and got ripped off. But you might be able to find some cheap ones too, because they're a pretty common item. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the rings. So then our gloves, we've got... So I've got a pretty bad implicit roll set on this. I need to fix the Searing Exarch implicit on this. But basically, shitload of energy shield, any resistances that you can get on the build, and any other attributes really help. And that's basically all you need to target with this. And then belt, all resistances and as much ES as you can get. So I'm just using a crystal belt. It achieves the result. It's not the best crystal belt. The best one would be a Crusader rolled crystal belt that can get percentage ES. And then I could get up past 5,000 ES in my pool. And finally, I've got Corpse Walkers, and you want the implicit lab enchant for 80% chance to avoid being stunned if you've killed recently. And the obvious reason for this is you want to be able to spawn corpses as you run around, and then drop your Detonate deads. Flask-wise, literally just Sulphur Flask, Granite Flask, Quicksilver Flask. I've got a Cinder Swallow, which buffs up damage, and Quartz Flask because I delve, and that's basically it. And you want them all rolled with gain charges when you get hit. So they just piano for you. So then you're just running around, not even thinking about taking any damage because everything just does everything for you. Anyway, let's get into the gem setups. Okay, gem setups on this build. So in the helm, I'm running Defiance Banner, Determination, Tempest Shield, and Discipline. In my wand, I'm running Flame Dash, Desecrate, and Spell Cascade. Obviously, when you do it, you want everything cascading, so you get more corpses to cast on. Do you need it? Not really, but it's good to have. It's nice to have. In my shield, I've got Vitality. Now, you don't need to have Vitality in this build. The reason why I have Vitality in this build is strictly because my Watcher's Eye has percentage increased life regeneration per second while affected by Vitality. And because that synergizes with Zealot's Oath, I convert that into ES regeneration per second. So if you can find something similar to that, then run it. If you can't, don't waste the time. It's just wasted mana, and you could probably run something else or put Overcharge on Tempest Shield for block or whatever. And then I'm also running Molten Shell, and that's just on my move button, so it's always casting. And Clarity, and that's just for mana sustain. Do you need it? If you can sustain mana without it, you don't really need it. Then you want to run in the chest Detonate Dead, Awaken Burning Damage support, Awaken Deadly Ailment support, Ignite Proliferation, Unbound Ailments, and Cruelty. If you can't get other Awaken gems, just get the base level 20s or 21s, you'll be fine. It'll do plenty of damage, don't stress. And in the gloves, I'm running multiple totem support, Spell Totems, Wither, and Faster Casting. And in the boots, I'm running Cold Snap, Void Sphere, Arcane Surge, and Casting Damage Taken. I really like Void Sphere because it just pulls enemies off you and it gives you time to breathe. You can put in there whatever you want, really. It's up to you. Okay, so Pathing Tree. So we start at the Witch area. We move up, we grab Arcane Focus. We want to get Searing Heat. I didn't get Essence Surge straight away, but you can if you want. Then I came down, picked up my influence nodes. You don't want to get Chaos Inoculation until you have enough ES in the pool to do so. Then you come across, you want to grab your Breath of Flames, you want to grab your Deep Thoughts, and your Increased Meta Reservation Efficiency and the Meta Mastery as well. Dual Socket, then you'll come back across. I'm just having to think here. I could probably use Leap of Faith, but I don't really need that, do I? Anyway, ideas. So then you come across, you grab Unnatural Calm. You want regenerate 2% energy shield per second. Then we'll leave this until last, and I'll talk about what we need to get here. Then we come across, grab Arcane Guarding, chance to block increase. We want Might and Agility because this build really struggles with these attributes. Then Insightfulness, and then you want 100% increased energy shield from equipped armor, or equipped helmet, sorry. And then you come back down, you want to get Holy Fire. Now, don't change the Zealot's Oath until you have CI. If you don't have CI, don't get Zealot's Oath. Then you'll grab Sovereignty. You want to grab the Spiritual Aid because we still need to buff up minion damage because we then scale up the Ignite effect from our Detonate Dead. Then you'll come and pick up Faith of Steel. And the Mastery, recover 5% energy shield over 1 second when you take physical damage from enemies. It's actually quite powerful. Then you come down, pick up the Dual Socket, Divine Shield, Sanctum of Thought, which reduces incoming crit, and then 10% physical damage taken from hits as chaos damage, which means we nullify 10% of our physical inbound damage. You want to get your Dual Sockets here as well, and I've got a Corrupted Blood Jewel just sitting in here with some Fire Dot Energy Shield and Energy Shield recharge rate. And then you'll grab your Glancing Blows and Sanctuary. Ideally, like if you can skip a few things, get your Glancing Blows as soon as possible, and also make sure you get pretty much, anything that buffs up your ES and whatnot as soon as possible. But obviously this is more like scaled towards being a second build and not really a league starter. You probably could start this league start, it's Detonate Dead, but I'm not pitching this as a league starter. This is second build, so I'm assuming you have just a little bit of currency to get it started before we get into it. And this is only level 94 as well, so yeah, should be able to do all of that by like level 70, level 75. And then we get into the cluster jewels, which we take last. So on this build, you'll notice in the B-roll, I explode enemies, and I don't have Aureus End or anything, and I don't have Profane Bloom on this build. I actually do that by using Unspeakable Gifts, which funnily enough works really well on this build. Now, chaos damage, as far as I'm aware, does scale on this build. So according to Path of Building, flat chaos damage does scale on this build. Chaos spells hinder, and this is what I'm not currently sure of. I don't believe Touch of Cruelty actually works. But I may be wrong. So there's just some things about Black Flame that I'm not 100% on yet, and that's why this is a part 1, but I'm sure I'll learn the mechanic a little bit more and be able to provide more clarity around that. Maybe someone in the comments is learned in this. And then beyond this, so I run Wicked Paul, Touch of Cruelty, and Unspeakable Gifts. Unspeakable Gifts gives me the 10% chance to explode enemies, which is really cool. And then I run Burning Bright, Fan the Flames, and also Flow of Life and Brush with Death, which are really good, sustainable sort of nodes to run. Because we still want to scale up Ignite Dot, because it just converts the Ignite to Chaos. Scaling up Chaos Dot, I don't believe will actually help this build. You need to scale up the underlying Ignites. You can scale up the Chaos damage, flat damage, but the Ignite and the damage over time cannot be Chaos damage over time, if that makes sense. Now, the jewels that I've got in here are Essence Glutton, and these were like, I bought these for like 60 chaos and 1 div. Super cheap, and this gives us the Necromancer Ascendancy, which basically synergizes with using Detonate Dead. And that's basically it. Now, Ascendancy-wise, the obvious one, get Shaper of Flame straight away. Shaper of Storms makes it a lot easier to level. Then you want to get Mastermind of Discord, and then you want to get Heart of Destruction. And then you're done. And that's basically it. So, overall, what's my feel of this build? Like, this is a fantastic map clear build. I don't mind playing it for bossing as well. It's actually not terrible at bossing. It's just not, like, amazing. But the plus side is you fucking live. So you don't have to worry about dying or anything like that. So it's super tanky. And like all the builds on this channel, I love tanky builds. I would put this on par with the tankability of the Vortex Occultist build that I put up a couple leagues ago, or 3 leagues ago. Like the really chunky one. This is about equivalent, but with the Elementalist. Now, what other stuff could you do with Black Flame? Well, you could take this tree and you could pretty much play anything that sort of scales Ignite Dot, realistically. if you played around with the tree, realistically, you could actually get it to work quite well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So anyway, I'll put a POB in the description, and I've been putting the pobb.in files in for people who use Macs as well, or consoles. Got any questions, hit me with them, and I'm happy to answer them. And I definitely invite people to take the Black Flame build here as a template and sort of play with it. It'd get like Fireball or Firestorm working or something like that. It'd be really cool to see someone do that. Anyway, until next time, don't forget to like and sub to the channel and like the video and whatnot. Don't forget to follow the Twitch. And I'll see you guys either on stream or in the next video. Alright, have a good one, and bye.